Hello, my algebra fans. This is Mr. Champlin here, and today I'm going to go over solving by completing the square, which in other words is we're going to solve quadratic functions in vertex form. So the first thing you have to do is looking at this question, f of x, or function I should say, f of x equals x squared minus 6x minus 16. I have to equal that to 0, so I'm going to rewrite this as x squared minus 6x minus 16 equals 0. Now, even though using factoring might be faster on this one, we wanted to show you completing the square with rational numbers, whole numbers, to make more sense. All right, so when completing the square, the first thing I have to do is take my b value and I'm going to divide that by 2. So I'm going to get negative 6 divided by 2 equals negative 3. And that's my first important number. And then I'm going to square that. So I'm going to have negative 3 squared equals 9. And there's another important number. So I'm going to take that 9 and add it and subtract it into my left side. So I'm going to rewrite this as x squared minus 6x plus 9. You always add first. Minus 9. Keep the negative 16 equal to 0. Now what I teach my students is I put parentheses around my first 3 terms, and then I combine like terms outside of the parentheses. So I have x squared minus 6x plus 9, still in parentheses, minus 25. I'm going to sort this, and I want the 25 over on the right side. So I'm going to add 25 to each side, making this now x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals positive 25. And in parentheses, this x squared minus 6x plus 9 is a perfect trinomial. So I can make that a perfect square. And this is where I take that negative 3, because that is the perfect part of the perfect square. So it's going to be x minus 3 squared equals 25, right? Because on the left side, I just did completing the square. All right. Now I have a little issue because I have x minus 3 squared, and I have to take the square root of that because that is the opposite operation. So I'm going to take the square root of this x minus 3 squared, and whatever I do on the left side, I have to do on the right side, right? So when I complete that square, I get x minus 3, because that's the opposite operation, equals plus or minus 5, because we don't know if it's 5 times 5 equals 25 or if it's negative 5 times negative 5 equals 25. So I put the little symbol plus or minus 5, and now we have x minus 3 equals plus minus 5. I'm going to add 3 to each side, and now I have x equals 3 plus or minus 5. Well, what does that mean? That means that if x equals 3 plus 5, that means x equals 8. Also, x can equal 3 minus 5, which means x equals negative 2. And it works out. It's the same answer we got from factoring. All right? Hopefully that made sense. Let's try another one, but this time let's try it with irrational answers. So these aren't going to be whole numbers. You're going to get decimals, or you're going to leave them in your squared form, all right? Or your rational form, I should say. So it says solve by completing the square, x squared plus 10x plus 7. You're going to set that equal to 0. So I have x squared plus 10x plus 7 equals 0. I'm going to take my b number, which is positive 10, and I'm going to do that. 10 divided by 2 equals 5. That's an important number. And then I'm going to do 5 squared, which equals 25. All right, so these two are going to be important for completing your square. I'm going to take this 25, and I'm going to add it and subtract it into my trinomial. And it's going to look something like this. So I have x squared plus 10x, excuse me. And now I'm going to always add first, add 25, subtract 25, and I have my plus 7, which equals 0. I put my parentheses around, and now I'm going to combine like terms. So I have x squared plus 10x plus 25, crazy looking 5, minus 18 equals 0. I'm going to sort, and I'm going to get x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals positive 18, right? And still in parentheses, this is my perfect trinomial. And if I notice, I have 5 here from when I divided the 10 by 2. So that's going to be my portion into my perfect square. Apologize. So I have x plus 5 squared equals 18. And I'm going to take the square root of each side. And notice that 18 isn't a perfect square. So when I get x plus 5, I'm going to set that equal to plus or minus the square root of 18. Okay, because I know it's going to be a number that can be plus or minus the 18. So I'm going to leave it there. And now I'm going to subtract my 5 from each side. And I'm going to get x equals negative 5 plus minus the square root of 18. But notice with the square root of 18, that's not simplified, right? Because you have the factors 9 times 2, which in other words would be the square root of 9 times the square root of 2, which means that's going to be 3 to the square root of 2. So technically my answer is going to be x equals negative 5 plus or minus 3 times the square root of 2. But what if it says round your answers to the nearest tenth? This is where you can plug into your calculator, your T-Inspire, and I already did it, which you get x minus 5 plus the square root of 18 equals negative 0.8. As well as you want to do the subtracting the square root of 18, right? So you want to do minus 5 minus 8 square root of 18 equals negative 9.2. So if they ask for decimals or to the nearest tenth, make sure you round to the nearest tenth and make sure you have it in decimals. However, if it says write it in the simplest radical form, all you would have to simply do is leave it in x equals negative 5 plus 3 to the square root of 2, or x equals negative 5 minus 3 to the square root of 2. Okay? Hopefully this video was informative, and hopefully you have an amazing day. Thank you very much.